And we're live. Welcome back, Northreach, to another episode of The Chopping Block, the only Amtgard podcast ever. As always, I'm your host, Hars, and making her debut in this first episode is my page and co-host, Ray.
Hello.
And making his second appearance on our show and filling in the final gap for our three Beneath the Armor segments, welcome, the last prince, Lucien.
Hey guys, thanks. Good to be back.
How's it going, Lucien? Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, man. Yeah, going good.
Sweet. Sorry we didn't get to hang out much during Amtgard. We were kind of in a rush so I could get home and actually start working on this episode with you.
Yeah, dude, I totally understand. It's not a 5-minute drive.
Yeah, it's probably it was more like a 6 or 7-ish.
But hours, not minutes.
Well, okay, maybe that's highballing it a little bit, but I did have a part 2. Hold on.
I don't think you'd be back yet.
Sorry about that, I was typing something out. Anyway, so, Lucien, you've been a part of this game for quite a bit now, like, what, 7, 8 years now?
Not quite. I am approaching 6.
Oh, well, okay. So, I guess I should probably clarify, for those of you who are just tuning into our Beneath the Armor segments, this is where we start to take a bit more of a more focused approach to our interviews and actually ask more questions that are directly relating to them rather than just sort of taking a single post and saying, hey, drop whatever questions you got here and we might be able to answer them. But, yeah, so you've been at it for 6 years, and I know we talked a bit about it on our, debut episode, but so what exactly got you into doing Amtgard to begin with?
Well, some friends and I used to gather in one of the guys' backyards and swing real swords at each other with cheap, chintzy plastic protection like soccer guards on our arms and whatnot. And one day I just got to thinking, I was like, it would be fun if we could do this with more people and less danger. And so I got the idea to kind of start a local LARP chapter, and I did some research, and we found Loop and Moon, and that they were going to be at the Ren Fair, which was at that time just a couple weeks away. So we ended up going up to the Ren Fair and met Goran and a few other people, and Goran got us set up with Amtgard, and I founded Frozen Coast, and the rest was history.
All right. Well, I know you've done more than just founding a chapter, but so can you talk a little bit more about some of the other things that you've done?
Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. Like I said, I have been playing Amtgard for just about 6 years. In that time frame, I have been out of office for 2 days. So, yeah, I've done quite a bit. So yeah, I guess I'll just start from the beginning and work my way through it. I founded Frozen Coast. I was Monarch, the founding Monarch. I ran for Monarch again. After that, actually the reign that followed that was kind of a funny story. I ran for and was elected Regent, and 2 days into the reign, our champion had to step down. And I had learned from my 2 terms as Monarch of a small shire that the champion office is much more sort of crucial, I guess, than the Regent when you have that small of a group. So I actually, at the Monarch's request, I transitioned into the champion office for that reign. And I actually just fell in love with the office of champion. It's still, to this day, one of my favorites. So I ended up running for champion again. After that, I did another year as local Monarch. Let's see, that puts us at 3 years. So yeah, after that, I was asked by Hadelin to run to be Principality Regent while she was Princess. And so I did that for a year, and then I took over for her as Prince. And then I had my 2 days out of office. I was talked into filling the local champion in Frozen Coast, Pro Tem, and at the conclusion of that reign, Northreach needed a new Pro Tem champion, and that is an office I have wanted for a very long time, so I threw my name in the hat and was appointed. So that's where we are today. I'm currently serving as Northreach champion.
And if I remember correctly, you also helped with a lot of the corporas we did initially for founding both the Principality and for, what was it? And for our 501c3 that we were pitching for, as well as our Kingdom one. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe I've been on every corpora committee we've had. My involvement in the last one was a little bit less than in previous times because I was also Prince at the time, so I was doing a lot of other stuff. But yeah, I've done a lot of work on the corporas as they've developed over the years.
Okay, I know I was involved in like 2 of them. I don't think I was involved in the initial one for the Principality, so I wanted to make sure I got all 3 of those right.
Yeah, you did.
All right, cool. So, I guess to talk a little bit more about, you like your Amtgard history. So, how did you come across the name of Lucien?
You know, I've been asked that question a good number of times over the years, and I always wish that I had some really awesome story to tell you. But, I really don't. I was just sitting in my living room trying to think of a good persona name, and almost out of nowhere, the name Lucien came to me, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And that was it.
Wow, no grand epic adventure or bus full of starving orphans you had to save or anything like that?
I know, right? I wish. I always wanted my name origin story to be better than it is, but that's the boring truth of it.
Oh, also, before we continue in this, I know you wanted to mention a shout-out you wanted to give to Vex.
Oh yeah, thank you. I wanted to give a shout-out to Vex, because in the announcement for this, she called me her favorite Jedi Knight, and that made me happy. So thank you, Vex.
We love you, Vex. We hope you're doing well wherever you are. Alright, I had a list of questions here. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look through these.
In the meantime, I'm a little bit curious. You mentioned it was Champion that's your favorite role in Office?
Yeah, one of Champion and Monarch. I enjoy both of those Office pretty thoroughly.
What about each Office appeals to you the most? Just for anyone listening.
Yeah, for sure. Champion, I enjoy Champion because it's sort of, you write the games for the day. So at the end of the day, when you got everyone sitting around at Amtgard talking about how awesome the second game was, or whatever, it's just a really nice feeling to know that you wrote something that so many people enjoyed.
That is super cool. How about the Monarch?
Sort of the same thing, I guess. Monarch is a lot of fun because you're kind of, when something comes together on the bigger picture level outside of one battle game day, it's kind of fun. I mean, Monarch can be a lot of work, but can be super awesome at the end of your reign to look back at everything you've accomplished. And I've spent a lot of time as Frozen Coast Monarch, so it makes me really proud to remember the days that Frozen Coast was a shire, and here we are as a duchy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not taking sole credit for that. There's many monarchs that put in a lot of work to make that happen, but it's nice to know I was part of that process.
Definitely. And speaking as just a member of Northreach in general, it's been really awesome being a part of all of that. And I think sometimes it's easy as members for us to miss what each office contributes to our experience as park goers. So it's really cool that you spoke out on that. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm kind of curious. So as like I said, you've been at this game for quite a while. And you are also a Paragon Scout. Can you tell us why that might be? Why? Now, is that your favorite class to play? And if so, why is that?
It is, and largely, I love the versatility of the Scout class. I'm sure you've heard the expression that Scout is basically a Swiss Army knife.
Oh yeah.
And I love that. on the battlefield, I tend to move around and attempt to fulfill a variety of roles regardless of what class I'm playing. So I enjoy the ability of Scout to do that. And it's a good class. You can do anything from archery, strap on a small shield and 3 points of armor. You can almost keep up on the front lines. Scout has the heal ability. I mean, you do all kinds of stuff with it, and that's what I love about Scout.
It's a regular jack of all trades class, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually, a little fun fact for people who didn't know, like originally when I first started doing Amtgard like years ago, the Scout was actually my first class.
I didn't even know that. That's kind of cool.
Yep, predates even my old assassin days.
You were born with a wizard hat on your head, don't lie.
I just came out here to have a good time, Ray, and personally, I'm feeling a little attacked right now.
What can I say? The hat suits you, man.
Okay, I guess I can't deny that one. So again, I know we sort of talked about this in the last time you were in our series, but did you have any like recommendations for people wanting to get into office, whether it's like champion, monarch, regent, or whatever have you?
Yeah. I don't remember if I said this last time or not, but irregardless, the number one advice I always give people who are thinking about going into office: do it because you want to. Do it because you love it. If you go into office for any other reason, I have found you're gonna tend to not be as successful as the people who are doing it because they want to do it. I've seen officers go in who have accepted their position more out of either peer pressure or feeling that they have to rather than want to, and not that those people necessarily always did a bad job, but it's just not as successful as the people who are doing it because they love it. Beyond that, if you know what office you want to step into, before the reign is up, talk to the person currently holding that office. Get some insight on the office, and I know I've over the years in different offices, I've had people express interest in the office I've had, so I've kind of just taken them under my wing and had them help me do the duties of the office and kind of get a feel for it before they actually office. And I think that helps a lot.
I can actually second that statement, because before this I ended up doing office a lot for I did a lot of office work for Ravenstone, and even did a couple terms in office for Lupin Moon. And I think what was his name? Talon, I think, probably said it best, is if your heart's not in this if your heart's not in it when you're serving, it's always going to show. Like, when you half-ass it, it's gonna suck. And when you're actually into it, then it's gonna be great.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, that brings up a question, and that is, so you've been in office pretty much as long as you've been here, save for the 2-day vacation you got. So my question is, how did you deal with, how do you combat, like, the feeling of being burnt out?
I loved the way, I think it was Mini Bard, I don't remember, somebody was asked, how do you deal with burnout? And they said, poorly. I feel that's, I can kind of agree with that. The biggest way I've managed to avoid getting burnt out, for the most part, I'm not going to say that there have not been times when I've felt incredibly burnt out, but the way I get past it for the most part is by hopping around to a variety of offices, rather than sticking to doing one thing at one level, because each office is a very unique sort of outlook on the game. You maybe notice things in certain offices that you don't in either in other offices or not in office at all. So serving in offices at both kingdom and local level has sort of helped me mitigate some burnout, because it's always a fun new perspective.
I understand that. So sort of rotating your work kind of makes things easier and gives you sort of a new perspective?
Yeah, you don't feel like you're in the grind, the same grind, rain in and rain out. You kind of mix it up, do different things. Granted, there are some offices that you have a term limit of. Monarch and Regent, you can only do those twice in a row. But I find it helps to try a bunch of different things, and honestly, trying a bunch of different offices will help you be better in each one. Because when you, especially like at Monarch level, I think, because when you've been in those supporting offices, you have a better understanding of what they have to do. So then when it's your turn to delegate to them, you kind of get the vibes of what they're working on already. And I think it helps with more successful management.
Okay, I see.
So I have a question for you about Office in particular in Kenai. What are some unique aspects or challenges to offices held in Kenai versus other locations like, say a city like Anchorage? You're in a smaller community, maybe a little more remote. So what are some challenges and sort of aspects to Office to keep in mind when people are interested?
The most immediate thing I can think of that would make being an office in Kenai different than being an office in Anchorage would simply be sites for like mid-rain and whatnot. We have less options down here. Granted, we still have plenty, and we always make do. But I think that would be the first thing to my mind. After that, I think advertising is maybe a little easier down here than it is in a bigger city because, there's less buildings, so you get more attention to any flyers you put up or whatnot. And it's a smaller community, so word of mouth travels much faster.
Thank you. Yeah, I was wondering about that because, as you said, in Anchorage there are a lot of options, but then a voice can be drowned out pretty easily just from the huge population.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to being an office both in a small community and in a large city.
Having attended Dungeon Crawl down there, I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I loved all the sites that we played at and stayed at. So thank you to you and all your officers and your members for helping to set that up during those times.
Yeah, totally. I've had a lot of fun the couple times that I've run Dungeon Crawl. I always enjoy being involved in that event, whether it's as Autocrat, Feastocrat, or just on the Monster team or whatever. I think I've done just about all of it over the years in Dungeon Crawl, and I have a lot of fun running that event.
Actually, do you mind if I make an honest confession with you, Lucien?
Sure, man.
I think comparatively, you guys definitely put on some of my favorite of the dungeon crawls we've had, and that's not to bash like what we had back in Palmer for dungeon crawl, but it's just, it feels like its own unique thing as opposed to taking place in the same location as Wolf's Cry.
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling as well. Ravenhall was actually an amazing site for the event, but it did feel this year almost like Wolf's Cry 2 rather than actually Dungeon Crawl. I see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, it had its own unique flair because it was in a different location than we normally had, and I will say this about the new location we had is it may not have had some of the best things. It had some of the worst and also some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows from it. And one of the biggest highs was definitely the dungeon we had. Like that was probably one of the best dungeons I've seen.
Yeah, the dungeon this last year was super awesome, and that was due in no small part to Blue. So while we're on this topic, I'll give him a shout out. He was the dungeon master this last Dungeon Crawl, and he did an excellent job.
So, is there any plans to actually have Frozen Odyssey return to Frozen Coast, or not Frozen Odyssey, Dungeon Crawl to Frozen Coast, or is that just going to be like a new Palmer thing?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. That's probably a question that you would get a better answer if you were to ask the Council of Crowns, because ultimately it's going to be up to them. And, speaking personally, I would like to see it come back to Kenai. However, having been the Autocrat this last year, and when the mall fell through, the mad scramble we made trying each and every place that even might be able to hold the dungeon, and the repetitive shoot downs, I would totally understand if it doesn't come back to Kenai, just because it is really difficult to find a place down here for a dungeon that size. So, time will tell is about all I can say on that right now.
That's fair. Well, I guess in talks of Kenai-specific events, you want to talk a bit about Frozen Odyssey? Because I unfortunately was never able to make it to any of them, and I think this year I'm going to be breaking that cycle.
Yeah, we can talk about it if you want. I am not one of the more knowledgeable people. I've never been involved in running that event, and I had to miss last year because unfortunately it had to be scheduled on the same weekend as Principality Crown Quals, which, as the highest ranking uninvolved officer, I had to run.
That's right.
So, yeah, so I didn't make it last year, and I've never been involved in running that event. We can totally chat about it. I can give you what perspective I have, if you'd like.
Yeah, by all means.
So it started, I think 3 years ago now, as an idea by Rosedath, I believe. And the idea was to have a weekend camping event where everybody's in character from the start of the event to the end of the event. And over Saturday, everyone shows up Friday night, sets up tents and whatnot. Over Saturday, there's a lot of quests out in the woods, and meals are served, and I would say it's kind of akin to a smaller Solstice War, almost, but with a lot more focus on roleplay.
Right, I think I follow.
Yeah, so it's pretty fun. I had a good time a couple years ago when I went to it. It was set like 5 minutes from my house, so I didn't actually camp the year that I went. I just drove in, hung out till everyone was pretty much till the party was winding down, drove home, came back early the next morning, and whatnot. But I don't know. I think this year, if I can make it, I'm gonna actually camp with everyone this time.
Sounds like a good time. Yeah, I definitely plan on making it this year, so I would definitely like to see as many people come out as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
Alright, well, I guess we can kind of dive into the questions we got. I think we've only got the one here from Richter, and that is, how do you feel about the current rain theme?
I think it's a lot of fun. I think I personally have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of watching people find new and inventive ways to use the Nerf blasters and the reactions to them. Granted, I haven't done a lot of traveling yet, just little bits. So I've really only seen the blasters in use in Frozen Coast and Loop and Moon, but in those parks, people seem to be enjoying them, getting a kick out of them, and I think it's a neat thing to have, something a little new to mix up the old vanilla Amtgard. As far as the actual work behind making this rain theme happen, it's been interesting. It's a little bit of a challenge, I've found, to write battle games for more than 3 teams. But I actually enjoy that because, as I said, I've been champion multiple times now, and so it's kind of nice to have a new challenge to learn to adapt to. I think those kind of things are the things that make better officers, so I've been actually enjoying the challenge of that. I personally am a huge Star Wars fan, have been for years, so it's been a lot of fun for me, just like last time we did it, to get into the whole, making Jedi robes and role-playing as a Jedi.
Kind of gives you that satisfaction of being sort of a trailblazer for other kingdoms to follow.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, in short, I'm having a lot of fun with this rain theme, and I think it was a good choice.
So, sort of a follow-up question that he has is there anything you would do differently if it were to reset on day 1 again?
Hmm. Not that I can think of immediately. I mean, I'm sure if I sat down and really thought about the course of how it has gone and how it could have gone, I could probably think of something, but I don't have any immediate regrets that I would do differently.
Alright.
So, touching on the rain theme question, I'm curious, you brought up the challenges of designing battle games for this rain. How have blasters changed the dynamics of creating battle games as champion?
I don't know that they have, really. I don't see about the only difference I see in the Nerf blasters versus, say, a hand crossbow. Excuse me. About the only difference I really see is that, they reload a little faster, and they can fire off a little bit faster than, say, a hand crossbow. But beyond that, it's basically just a handheld bow. So I don't know that blasters have had an impact on writing games. But again, that might be something that you would want to ask a local champion, because I've only written, 1.5 sets. I'm in the process of working on this coming Kingdom Days battle games. So I've only written 1.5 sets of games in the...
You cut out there.
Yeah, sorry, I had a cough. I had to let go of the push to talk. But, yeah, I've only written 1.5 sets, whereas local champions have been writing sets of games for weeks, so they might have some insight that I don't.
One of the personal changes I actually noticed with the incorporation of blasters is more people have been playing Archer.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't from Lupinoon, we kind of had this running joke about how the Archer is a class that's basically non-existent because just so few people play him.
I've definitely noticed more archers or people using blasters as well. I think it's fun and it's interesting. It's nice to have so many objects that are airborne on the field because it adds an additional challenge just as a player as well.
Yeah, I've also noticed in the instances where you see somebody who's, role-playing a Jedi or a Sith or Revanite, whatever, and they've made their lightsabers, and the look of pure satisfaction on one of those players' faces when they manage to use their lightsaber to deflect a blaster bolt is one of my favorite things.
Absolutely.
I think I'm actually about out of questions. So, I think I know normally this is usually the part we kind of in previous episode we let Vex kind of just go off her hinges and ask people whatever. But Ray, since you're new to the show, would you like a chance at this?
I think I'll pass for this time and better prepare myself for next time.
Yeah, I'll admit this has been sort of a trial by fire episode with you, Ray, but honestly, I'm so glad that you made it onto the show with us.
Thank you for having me, and it was nice to get to hear Lucian's thoughts on things, so thank you.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Ray, I think you did a great job and came up with some very quality questions.
I agree, especially considering most of this episode's just kind of improv. What little questions that we had that were given, we answered in about 2 minutes. So everything else is just kind of us playing this by ear. Yeah,
I mean, it's been good talks, man.
Well, Lucien, as we start to bring this to a close, do you have any final thoughts you wanted to say as this next rain is coming close to the midway point?
Not really. I hope Northreach continues being as awesome as it is. That's about all I got for you, as cheesy as that statement may be.
Fair enough. Alright, I believe that wraps up our episode then. Alright everybody, thank you for watching at home, and tune in next episode where we'll be interviewing the Prime Minister of the Duchy of Frozen Coast, Aurora. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next episode. I'm Hars, this is Ray, and you've been watching The Chopping Block. Have a good night, everybody.
Night, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good night.